Beyond Battle Creek is a place to celebrate all that God is doing here at BattleCreek Church, behind the scenes and right in front of our eyes. My name is Gage Johnson, and I've been given the calling of finding and sharing those amazing things that God is doing in our church. As we honor stories of people knowing God, finding freedom, discovering their purpose, and making a difference, my prayer is that you would rejoice alongside us and find your place in the bigger story of the gospel. This season on Beyond Battle Creek, we're celebrating 20 years of BattleCreek Church. Whether this is your first week or you've been with us the whole 20 years, you're part of our history. This season, you'll hear stories of people who've been part of BattleCreek from the very beginning and some that have been only around for a few years. But throughout each story, you can find the common thread of God unmistakably moving in people's lives across Tulsa. BattleCreek Church is your place to know God, find freedom, discover your purpose, and make a global difference. Let's jump in. Well, welcome to the Beyond Battle Creek podcast. I'm sitting here with my friend Shane Grivna, and you've been a part of several Battle Creek campuses, which we'll get to in your story. But man, you have a heart for community group, you have a heart for serving, and you're just full of stories because you've been around here for a while.
Just a minute.
Man, let's not waste any time. I want to dive right into it. Your first introduction to the church that is now Battle Creek Church was actually through Gracemont Church, right?
Exactly.
So when did you and your wife and your family get involved with Gracemont, and what did that look like?
I'm trying to remember. Probably about 1995 is when we got involved. We'd moved out to the north end of Broken Arrow, built a house out there, and we'd been going to Southern Hills Baptist before then, which is good stories over there as well. But moved out there and said, let's find a church on this side of town, and ended up over at Gracemont. And we were there at Gracemont for about two and a half years before we ended up, I took a job in Missouri and moved up the road to Joplin.
So what year was that? I may have missed it in there.
95 maybe is when we came over, and then it was early 97-ish. We went to Joplin.
So you just missed the big changes that Gracemont undertook. They,
that's what I hear.
Famously brought on this half Egyptian youth pastor from Springdale, and he decided to bury Gracemont and see what the Lord would bring out of the ground. And you guys spent some time in Joplin, and then you came back to Broken Arrow. Is that right, or to Tulsa?
We did.
And
2007, we moved back. I took a job. I actually went to work for a company that I used to work for 10 years earlier. They invited me to come back and be their chief financial officer. So came back, and through connections, someone said, hey, you need to go check out this really cool church. What's the name of it? It's BattleCreek Church. Okay, we'll have to do that. Where is it? They described, and I was like, that sounds kind of where about Gracemont was. And indeed it was.
Oh, that's really funny. So, I mean, how long did it take you to realize, hey, this is the same church, but not the same church? And then in that, tell me, what was it like to step into the building for the first time? And what, about 10 years?
All of that, yeah. Yeah. No, to come back in after realizing, oh, indeed, this is the same building. The name has changed, but then to start taking in, how things were a little bit different, right? It felt different, obviously, but again, there were still some faces that hadn't changed that we'd known from several years back. So
yeah, what were some of those changes that you guys saw, just coming back, like surface level, beneath the surface? I know that there was a lot that changed probably from Gracemont, and then the first almost 5 years of Battle Creek Church. What was that like?
I think, well, again, just coming in 2007, right? The change had occurred maybe 4 years earlier or something like that. But so again, Gracemont had been more of a traditional type of Baptist church. We had Sunday school and all those kind of things, and then we come back and it's not that way, and discover that its emphasis is more on community groups and that type of activity. Different, but absolutely good. So that's really the first thing we noticed.
Had you guys ever been part of a community group before? I mean, you mentioned that you'd been part of, a couple of Baptist churches in Tulsa, and then in Joplin, I think you said you'd gone to a similar church up there too, with more like the Sunday school model, right? I'm guessing at Gracemont and Southern Hills. What was it like to transition to community groups, or had you ever experienced that before?
Well, at some level, a community group isn't too dissimilar to a Sunday school group,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Except that you aren't necessarily on the church campus right before the main worship service every week. So you build relationships and all those kind of things. But I feel like the community group model actually does more and takes it less to be an instructional type and more of a relational type of gathering of people. So, and that absolutely fits in what we think is the way to go.
Yeah, so you were just telling me before we started recording, you were talking about this phrase that, we kind of live by at Battle Creek, which is we're not a church with community groups, we're a church of community groups, which I think for some people might be like, oh, I don't really see the distinction. But for you, that's something that you take to heart deeply. Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you that we are a church of community groups, not a church with community groups?
So I'll take the with side first. When you're a church with community groups, it's just one of the things that you have. And not saying that's a bad thing, but it's one of many things that you do or have as a church. When we are a church of community groups, what we're saying is that's what we are first. And that's the priority. We have community groups, we have small groups because that's where we see people connect and people grow and do some amazing things, as opposed to we've got that, check the box. We've got community groups as well as all these other things. So I think it's more about what our foundation is as a church. I'll be the first to tell you, I enjoy Sunday mornings. Absolutely, the worship, the preaching and teaching. Alex is absolutely gifted in what he does. But if that is all you're getting on a weekly basis, you're going to find yourself running low.
Absolutely.
And community groups is the fuel that make the rest of the week and the rest of your life work.
Wow. I love that image of it being the fuel for your day and for your week every week. You guys have been a part of a lot of community groups and also several campuses. So if I'm remembering your story right, you guys come back to Tulsa in 2007. You're at the BA campus for 5-ish years, and then you guys moved from Broken Arrow to West Tulsa, where you are now, correct?
In Sapulpa.
Okay. And you guys decide like, hey, we could continue at the BA campus. You guys are kind of discussing this, I'm sure. Could continue at the BA campus. We know everybody there. Community is there and all of that. But there's this campus that's now closer that was launched not too long before you guys moved out there in Midtown. And you guys kind of started looking at the drive. And was the drive shorter? I mean, tell me about some of what you guys were thinking through there.
So what we've seen over time is, again, God always puts you in places on purpose, right? So we buy a house out in the country in Sapulpa because that's what we wanted to do. Our kids were getting out of high school, and we said let's go. So then we get out there, and then we're like, well, that's a long haul over there to Broken Arrow. But yeah, you're right. We've got relationships, we've got people, we know people, and all that stuff. But then we realize, well, we do know some of these people at Midtown. A few of them had come from the Broken Arrow campus to launch a Midtown campus, and we're like, let's go check it out. And over the series of several weeks of going to Midtown and starting to connect with people, we're like, hey, you know what? This is perfect. We can do that. So 5 years at the Broken Arrow campus, we start going to the Midtown campus and getting plugged in there and starting, again, building into community groups. And we've always had a heart for that kind of thing. We've always led community groups or hosted community groups or many of the different iterations of what our youth community groups look like. We'd done many of those in the past as well. So it was an easy transition for us because we felt God called us to make the move, and it wasn't just a convenience thing. It's inconvenient to drive to Broken Arrow. It is more about, hey, God's equipped us to come be a part of what's going on in Midtown.
Yeah, I think that for people that have been part of the BA campus, there's sometimes this anxiety or nervousness about, I'm not going to be in the same room as the person who's preaching, which is funny in some ways, but also like, if you grew up in a non-multi-site church where, the person preaching is broadcast to multiple locations, it can feel like, oh, this is wrong almost. Was there any tension like that for you guys, and how did you resolve it if there was?
All right, so you'll love this. I don't know if you ever heard this perspective before, but even if you're sitting in the worship center at Broken Arrow, there's these big screens that are up on the walls. And if you pay attention to yourself and for a moment just examine what you're doing, a lot of people are staring at those screens at the Broken Arrow campus. So, and that being said, absolutely, we need to have live worship locally in each campus location. But the teaching and preaching that Alex does, people at BA are watching those screens too.
So it's not a big change, right? Is what you're saying. I love that. I've heard a couple of people say that, like, yeah, we went to BA for a while because we wanted to be in the room, and then I realized I'm sitting in the back row and I'm watching the screens instead of the stage, and it doesn't change anything really, and then that way you guys get to be rooted in a community that's much closer to your home. Another thing I think about with you guys changing campuses is our campuses are not like Walmart, right? That's the approach that some multi-site churches take. Is it's going to be like at a Walmart neighborhood market. You go in, you turn to the left, produce is there, the dairy's right next to it, and all of those things. And we haven't taken that approach in the 6 campuses that we have in Tulsa. It's kind of a different flavor no matter where you go. So what was that experience like for you guys going from Broken Arrow to Midtown? Those are pretty different in a lot of ways, and very obviously very similar in so many other ways.
Yeah, no. Again, you think about that, right? Well, first of all, every campus physically is different. Physical location, just the way it's set up, because these are buildings and facilities that came to be a part of this. So it's not like we weren't building a McDonald's that looks like every McDonald's in the corner. But I think what I would say is every campus has a little bit of a different personality that fits for the community that they're in and a part of, and fits the people that are a part of the BattleCreek Church that's there. So every campus has a little different personality, but what we've learned and what we appreciate is the heart's the same. The heart is the same at every campus, and the heart is about not just, our campus and what's important to us. It's about the mission of Christ and why we're here and what we're doing. So it's serving and reaching out to people and all those things. And that's the heart that's behind every campus, and the heart that comes from Pastor Alex and every one of our staff people. So with that behind you, the personalities don't have to be identical. The personalities can be different. And every campus seems, even just the profile of the folks that are there, even though we appeal to multi-generations, you kind of take on the personality maybe of the people that are there in the location you're in.
I love that. And Tulsa is one of those things, is one of those places where different pockets of town feel so very different from each other, right? Like right now we're at the downtown campus, and that feels so much different than when we're at the Jinx campus or even the Midtown campus, which is very close, honestly. It's really funny to just see how quickly Tulsa can change, and our churches reflect the part of town that they're in so beautifully. And I really love that about our church and its multiple places, So you guys were at Midtown for about 5 years. 5 years, if I remember. And then in 2018, we launched a new campus, a little bit closer for you guys, right? In Jinx. Tell me about when you guys started thinking about attending the Jinx campus.
So for us, again, we're plugged into Midtown. We're hosting a community group, and leading and all those things, and are absolutely plugged in. They launched on Easter Sunday, I think it was the official launch at Jinx, and we were like, hey, that's cool. And then I thought, hey, that may be closer to home for us. Let's check it out. Well, it's about 2 minutes closer to home than Midtown was for us. So we're like, oh, okay, well, it's really not that different. But we went over there, and intentionally, when your community groups are not meeting during the summer, we was like, hey, let's go over and see what Jinx is like. see who's there and stuff like that. And of course, some faces are familiar that we've known from other places, and many are not. But we felt strongly that God said, "I want you to be here. I want you to be a part of this and what's going on here." And loved Lucas so much. Just a great guy, and miss him. But we were like, okay, God, I feel like you've led us here to Jinx to be a part of our third campus now, and so we dove in and started getting involved in community groups there. And my wife's been involved in the women's ministry, and I lead some of the Financial Peace University teaching there. So jumped in shortly after Jinx launched.
Man, that's awesome. So you guys have now experienced 3 different campuses, 50% of our campuses, if you want to put a number to it. And I think that's such a unique perspective. And people, rarely, circumstantially, are they going to move across town, and then, we open a campus that just happens to, get you closer. And if you're, live in the Tulsa area, that when you're across the river, it's a different culture, right? So Sapulpa and Jinx and West Tulsa, like all of those places, Sand Springs, like it's a different culture. Something about being on the west side of the river is just a little different. It's a little more country, right, over there.
We got hills out there.
You got hills out there, right? Yeah, you got the big trucks and the Jeeps to drive up and down those hills too. It's a little different than BA and Tulsa, which I love. I love that. Mm-hmm. You walk into the Jinx campus and you're very likely to see a mullet and cowboy boots and some George Strait Wranglers, like without a doubt. Or you might not see that, at Midtown, or at BA. You might see a couple. I don't know. We do have people from Wagner County come to the Broken Arrow campus. We might have to delete that. I don't know. But you guys have seen so much of our church, and I think that's really, really special. That not everybody does. There are a few people, even staff members, who've experienced a couple of different campuses, maybe 1 or 2, but to be a part of 3 is really, really cool. And the way that you guys have not just like, oh, we attend these campuses, but you're a core Hello Team member at Jinx, and I can say that with confidence because I've seen you at work. Nobody sneaks past you when they're trying to get in and out of that worship center down there. They know they're going to get at least a handshake, if not a hug, from Shane. And you guys have also led some community groups, which again I kind of want to circle back to that now. Of you guys have been a part of some really, really special community, and seen the Lord move and work in some special ways. I just wonder if you could share a couple of those things that you've seen the Lord do in community group.
Wow. 15 years of being a part of those, there's just so many things that happen in that course of time. Experiencing some of the real things in life, and some of these are real positive things, right? Seeing births that occur, right? Births that occur to a family that's never had a child before, or going through some tough stuff like someone loses a spouse. We've been in that situation where our host home, he was diagnosed with cancer and was in stage 4, while they were our host home.
Wow.
And tough deal. And when that happened, my wife and another lady in our community group were the first phone calls made by the spouse of Dawn, who was going through that, because that's where she wanted support immediately. Reaching out to those folks around in community. So it was a powerful thing. But even seeing some of the really cool stuff, right, when babies are born, and seeing people show up and bring meals and be a part of that, or when someone moves, right? We've been a part of a bunch of those over time, helping people move from one place to this house to their new house.
Man, if you have a truck in a community group, you're pretty much a semi-professional mover at that point, making a part-time salary of pizza and bottled water. That is the salary of a community group member with a truck.
That is no lie. And don't ever tell them you have a trailer either.
Yeah.
Things get interesting beyond that. But just so many awesome things that happen in community group. And again, it's about ministering to one another being there for people when they need it.
Yeah.
But also, and sometimes this has been hard for us, accepting some of that help when you need it.
Right.
But it just feels so good to be in a group with people like that you, even if you don't have all these common interests,
Sure.
right? The binding of Christ in all of our lives really does some amazing things and brings about community, even when we don't all have the same hobby.
And another part of the community groups that you were telling me about that you've been a part of that has been really important to you and Susan, your wife, is that you guys try to find community groups that don't all look the same when you sit in a circle. And, whether that is life stage or, socioeconomic background, how you were raised, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. You guys have tried to, put yourselves in community with people that aren't like you. Tell me a little bit more about that mindset.
So there's a lot of community groups are good, but we feel very strongly about the multi-generational community groups are absolutely the best way to go, because you have people in all walks of life, from very young, just marrieds or even singles that are out there, to all the way through the child rearing years, to the heavy duty career years, to those that are in retirement. And there is something to be said about putting all of that in the same room. And as you experience life, to have somebody that goes, you know what, it's happened to me. And having them be able to speak encouragement into you and maybe even giving you some help, understanding and giving you perspective. We feel like that is just, it's priceless. In contrast to if you have everybody that's of the same age and their kids are all the same age, and what happens when everybody in the community group's children are all going through potty training at the same time, right?
Right.
Who's going to speak to the wisdom of a few tips in potty training?
Yeah.
Again, I just see such value in having all these different voices in the room that have done different things, been exposed to different things, and can bring all that into the group.
Yeah, and that's true of your community group now, right? Could you describe what your community group at Jinx looks like right now?
So it's really cool. We're kind of on the older end of those that are, but we had folks in there that have been older than us as a part of it, all the way down to some single moms, right, that have got a baby or two, young couples that are going through their first pregnancy, folks that have got kids that are in grade school. We just had folks over at our house here a few days ago, and when they're coming in and they've got a preschooler and then a grade schooler, and then other folks that are coming in that are well beyond those years, that are talking to, they're about grandkids and all those things. Love just seeing the diversity of all that. And we've got a group of 5 or 6 single ladies in our group right now that most of them have gone through a divorce of some sort. Some of them have younger children, some of them have adult children. But again, it just is it's a composite of different experiences, and would you just bring them in and you love on people, and they start getting it and they start loving on people, and we'll have new people being invited to community group fairly regularly, right? So sometimes you just end up outgrowing the space that you have. So,
which is kind of where you guys are right now, right?
When everybody's there, we've got a pretty sizable community group, and sometimes that's a challenge. So
for sure. But like all healthy things, like a community group is going to eventually multiply and reproduce. And I've been a part of some of those conversations. It can be hard for sure to be part of that, but it's very healthy in the long run. And then you just gain more and more friends and chosen family, as you were saying earlier before we started recording. You're saying community group's great because it's the family you get to choose. We all have a family we didn't choose. Which,
not that we wouldn't choose them.
Sure.
But you know what? These are folks that I am choosing.
Absolutely. So I think this might be my last question here before we kind of wrap up. But there's a ton of people in our church who come on Sunday morning, or students who come on Wednesday nights, but they're not part of a community group yet. What would you say to that person to encourage them and maybe even address some of those fears that they might have about getting in community.
Wow. First thing that came to mind was, I dare you.
Okay.
I dare you to try it, because what you'll find is, even though you feel like you're getting fed coming when you do, and maybe the worship is important to you, or pastors teaching and preaching is the main draw for you, there is so much more. So much more. We've developed such amazing relationships with people that we still hang out with and do things with, even if it's not the community group night or Sunday morning, because these are great relationships that you will develop over time, and you want to do that because it's ministry, but it's also just enjoying life, getting to enjoy experiences. And some folks we've have been in community group with, we'll travel with at times and things like that. So it is one of the most powerful things is when in a community group you choose as a group to do some service and be involved. We've been involved in some really amazing service projects, service activities over the years, and that builds community, I think, as fast as anything. When you all say, you know what, we're going to go be a part of a clean slate project, and we're all going to go to this house, and we're going to spend the next 2 days putting in all the hours we possibly can imagine to make life better for somebody else.
What is it about those projects, you think, the service opportunities, that really builds community quickly?
I think it is the activity of Jesus Christ in that.
Okay.
Because I've experienced it myself, where you go saying, hey, I think we'll go be a part of this because we really want to be a blessing to a family. We really want to be a blessing in this activity. But what you find is, because you do that, God blesses, Jesus Christ blesses you in ways you never imagined. Absolutely. And you walk away from that, you go, I'm exhausted, but I am absolutely blessed, so much more than the blessing I intended to bring to this opportunity.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. That's really well put.
It blows you away. It really does. We've just met some great people and have been involved in those things. And when I remember one project where we were digging a French drain ditch around a house that had drainage problems. All the water was draining into their backyards. You want to know who real people are when you're all out there with shovels and picks digging a 3-foot or 4-foot drainage ditch in someone's backyard in the dark, because we need to be done by tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock or something like that. That's real. Yeah. That's real, and real people are going to show up and serve, and real relationships are going to get built.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, it's hard to have a mask when you're swinging a pickaxe at the ground and digging a trench with a shovel. That's where real friends are made, right?
All that.
I love that. Now, what would you say to the fears? Because I know for me, I can be a little introverted and a little irrational sometimes when it comes to my fears. I think my biggest fear every time I've tried a new community group is that I'm somehow going to get the time or the address wrong. And I'm going to show up, Bible in hand, at somebody's front door right when they're sitting down to have family dinner. And, it's Oklahoma, man. Like, they might meet you at the front door with a shotgun. You never know. And so, maybe it's not so irrational. But I think people have real fears about trying community group and the vulnerability that you talked about earlier. Yeah. What would you say to that person who's maybe a little afraid of diving in that way?
Well, as far as getting the wrong house in the wrong time, just get the right house at the right time.
Yeah.
That one we do.
Yeah, the Siri's pretty good, right, about giving the right directions.
It should. We've had challenges at our house out in the country.
I bet.
But I will say this, right? If we share things about community group, we say, hey, it's great relations and relationships are built and all those things, and those take time. So don't shy away from a community group because you're afraid of the intimacy or the relationships that are going to be a part of that, because I've never been in one that requires that when you come the first night.
Yeah, that's
right?
Good.
I think the first time you show up, it's awesome to sit in the room and just observe and see what community looks like in this community group. I'll share another story. One of the ladies in our community group, this was just amazing. She came to our church not knowing a soul. She showed up on a Sunday morning. And so we're getting to know her a little bit, and it's basically she comes in the door, and I see her, but I don't recognize her. So I just said hello to her. Well, my wife, she's the bulldog of relationships and all that stuff. So she caught her a little bit later and said, "Hi, my name's Susan. What's your name?" And she gave her a name and shared a little bit about what was going on. And then she said, "Hey, why don't you sit with us in the worship service?" So she did. And by the time we got to the end of the worship service, she started sharing a little bit of her story. And she said, "I sat out there in the parking lot just praying for strength to come in the door to a place that I didn't know a soul, but I felt like God wanted me to be here." And she said, and then you guys started talking to me and pulling me in. And she said, "This is where I'm supposed to be." And she's in our community group now,
Man,
ministering to other folks. And it is, I get a little choked up, but it's good.
yeah. And even like in my mind, like even that moment of sitting together in the worship center and her sharing that, being vulnerable with you guys for the first time, like that's the like root of community. Like that in itself, in my mind, is like the seed of community group. Like if you can just have a moment of vulnerability, whatever that looks like, and someone meets you in that space, that is community. And it's maybe not formalized community group, quote unquote, but it is a moment of two human beings coming together and being in the presence of Jesus in their vulnerability, and that's what community is all about.
No, a great example, right? We might be studying something together, and someone will share that, "Hey, I really struggle with this. This is a tough spot in my life." You don't necessarily hear that on Sunday mornings, right? It's not necessarily the thing that's being emphasized. And to hear somebody else that you're sitting in a room with say, "This is a tough spot for me," and you go, I'm not alone.
Exactly. And that's a powerful moment.
It is.
Well, Shane, you guys have been a part of BattleCreek Church for 15 years. And you've kind of split it up, 5 years at one place, 5 years in another.
We're due for a campus trip.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not sure where we're going to go next.
Yeah, I think Owaso's calling your name, or maybe downtown. I mean, you only got a couple that you haven't tried, so you guys got to put in your time.
The list is shorter.
That's right. But man, I think that it's amazing that you guys have been a part of our church and clearly had a huge impact wherever you've been.
Thank you.
Your name came up in a lot of conversations, as I was kind of saying, "Hey, I got to talk to Shane Grivna this week." They're like, "Oh, I love Shane. That's what a great guy." So, man, I just want to thank you for being a part of our community at BattleCreek Church, and we're looking forward to the next 20 years of you guys being a big part of that. So
we enjoy it. We really do.
Yeah, Shane, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Betcha.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Yep.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Beyond BattleCreek. If you liked what you heard today, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share so that we can continue to do projects like this. Thanks so much. See you next time.